let's call this,
Okay, I'm gonna get him in.
Okay, thank you.
let's call this public hearing to order. We have 4 council persons present. We have 6 on the Zoom camera.
I'll do the roll call.
Roll call, Ms. Lisa?
Thank you, sir. Reverend Matthews. Can you unmute him, Mr.? Okay. Thank you. Okay, I don't see Reverend Matthews, huh? Okay. Okay, no, not yet. Okay, Mr. Ina. He's absent still, okay. Mr. Orlander.
Here.
Mr. Ramsey.
Here.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rolfe.
Present.
Mr. Abear.
Present.
Mr. Bennett.
Here.
Mr. Duhan. Mr. Duhan.
He's connected to audio.
Oh, he's connecting. Okay, I see him though. Okay.
Somebody got a speaker on.
Mrs. Hidalgo.
Present.
Thank you. Dr. Rink.
Present.
And Mr. Adams.
Here.
We have a quorum present, sir.
Okay. Can you read the notice into the record?
Yes, sir. Notice is hereby given that the St. Mary Parish Council will hold a public hearing at 5:45 p.m. and will meet in regular session at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, May the 13th, 2020, in the Parish Council Meeting Room, 5th floor Courthouse, Franklin, Louisiana. The purpose of the public meeting will be to receive written comments by mail, fax, or email, and oral comments by telephone to adopt the following ordinances. An ordinance authorizing the president of St. Mary Parish to enter into a drainage, servitude, and right-of-way agreement with Christopher G. Little and a drainage, servitude, and right-of-way agreement with J.D. Towing Incorporated relative to Victoria Riverside Road, and an ordinance in compliance with ordinance number 1973, Chapter 5 Procedures, Divisions 5.4 General Procedures for Public Hearing, Sections 5.4.2, Rezonings, Zoning Map Amendments for Mark Abear. Public comments may be submitted prior to the public hearing via mail to St. Mary Parish Council, Clerk of the Council, 500 Main Street, Franklin, Louisiana, via email to lmorgan@stmaryparishla.gov, or via fax to 337-828-4092 to the attention of the Clerk of the Council. During the public hearing, public comments may be submitted via telephone at 337-828-4100, extension 517, and the public hearing may be viewed via the Facebook pages St. Mary Parish Office of Emergency Preparedness and Homeland Security, KQKI 95.3 FM, or KBZE 105.9 FM. In accord, we certify that we thank you for your attendance. Will be appreciated. Sincerely, Dean S. Adams, Chairman. And I did not receive any written or oral comments on any of these.
Any public comment?
Mr. Adams. Okay, and at this time, we're going to state for the record and for everyone that's not in attendance, if you would like to call on these 2 ordinances that I just previously stated, you may call in at this time at 337-828-4100, extension 517. We're going to give you approximately 5 minutes to call in. Thank you. Again, that number is 337-828-4100, extension 517.
I'm going to screenshot that to Mr. Adair because he called me the other day. He called me. No.
They know all how to put their hands on the
Lisa.
screen. You recognize.
Just, you see, want to tell them how to do it?
Yeah, you want to tell them?
Lisa. Have your attention for a minute. If you,
Put up a paper saying here.
the ones on computers, if you look at the bottom of your screen, this thing says reactions. You can click that if you want attention, and either put the hand or the thumbs up. And Mr. Dean will recognize you at the appropriate time.
Scott.
No, I'm just checking it to see it works.
Okay.
I can't get it off now.
It's off.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is. Dean, did you acknowledge
Hello?
Mark? Because I see he keeps on with the sign saying here. I guess he thinks maybe we don't hear him or.
Did y'all hear my conversation?
No, sir.
No. No, sir. Good.
Yeah, this
Good.
is Julie. How you doing? This is Bo LaGrange.
You mean the first part or the last
This
part?
the,
Yeah.
you recall we
I didn't want y'all to hear any of it, Scott.
drainage easement, the property across the river from you.
This is, we're rolling live on Facebook, KQKI, so watch what you say.
All that. Maybe it might have been.
Okay, not being any more public comment.
But what it is
David, your mic's on.
the,
We got a phone call.
we-
But I don't think, again, that phone number is 337-828-4100, extension 517.
Chris Little.
Rashonda, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's it. And so.
What happened to Jay? Did Jay not get on?
We have to adopt an
Rev's here.
ordinance. So this is a
No, he's
public
not.
hearing.
He was about to dial in, Scott.
Okay.
You just dialed in, I'm
So
letting
that's
you
what
know.
it is. You good? Oh, okay.
There he is. Mr. Iner's present.
Oh, okay. Well,
There he is.
all right, so you didn't need to make any comments then? Oh, okay. Yeah, well, tomorrow we'll reach out to you and give you all what we got. We'll send it to you.
Can you hear us, Jay?
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yes, roger that.
Wait, let me look and see. It's- Right, that's correct. Yes, it said it had Charles Denning as the signatory. Okay. Yes, ma'am. All right, good talking to you. Uh-huh.
55 should be the time.
Nobody called in, Bob?
Giving a motion to adjourn.
The motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
Got a motion by Dr. Rink. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Olander. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We're starting our meeting in about 7 minutes.
I'm muting the mic in the council meeting room.
just bow where we are. Dear God, our Father, we thank you once again for this opportunity to come together and have this meeting. God, we thank you for this fellowship that you've ordained among the leaders of this parish. God, we pray that your blessings would cover us during these proceedings, that you would allow your spirit to go before us, that you would give us wisdom, understanding, and allow the spirit of peace and unity to saturate the atmosphere in which we combine our thoughts and our hearts and our ideas. God, we also pray that your divine protection, your provision, and even your procession would be upon our parish. God, we thank you for guiding us through safely over the last several trying weeks and months that we've been dealing with this ordeal of the COVID-19 virus, which has changed our lives, what we believe to be forever. But God, we know that though our lives may have changed and the circumstances in which we do business may be different, God, your word reminds us that you are the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. And so we just thank you for being consistent, the one consistent thing in our lives that we can depend on and we can trust that will never change. And that is your faithfulness, your promises towards your people. So God, we ask tonight that everything that we do would be decent and in order. God, that you would continue to bring resources, that you would continue to bring relief to all of your people, not all over St. Mary Parish, but all over this world, God, where people are hurting and suffering at a level that we've never seen before. We ask that you would continue to cover our government at every level, federal, state, and local, and that you would continue, dear God, to allow us to serve in the capacities and the skill sets and the gifts and talents that you've given us. God, we pray especially for the families of those civic and public leaders, God, that are on the front lines, that are doing everything in our power to take care of the needs of your people. We especially pray, dear God, for the members of our families that are sick, those that are suffering not only from this virus, but from any illness or ailment that might come against our physical bodies. We thank you, we praise you as your blessings continue to flow. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Ms. Quinn, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we do roll call, we have 4 council persons present. We have 7 on a Zoom meeting, so we have a quorum. Roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Reverend Matthews.
Present.
Mr. Ina.
Here.
Mr. Orlander.
Here.
Mr. Ramsey.
He must be muted.
Is he muted?
I am.
Yes,
Here.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Mr. Rolfe.
Present.
Mr. Abear.
Present.
Mr. Bennett.
Here.
Mr. Duhon.
Here.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Hidalgo.
Present.
Dr. Rink.
Present.
And Mr. Adams.
Here.
We have a quorum present, sir.
Okay. Next up is reading of the minutes from the previous meeting.
I make a motion, we go ahead and dispense with the reading of the minutes and accept as written.
Got a motion by Mr. Olander to accept the minutes as written.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Got a second by Dr. Rank. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next up is a guest, Mr. Lance Meir. He has a problem. He couldn't make the meeting. We're getting him on the phone because he's a Baldwin Fire Chief. He wants to appear before the council, talk about his truck allocation.
Hey, Lance, Bowler Grounds. I got you here. I'm gonna put you on speaker. All right. Can you hear me, Lance?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Can everyone hear him?
Can everyone hear him?
Speak, Lance.
Yeah, everybody can hear me?
That out all on the screen.
All right, Dean.
Okay, I can hear him.
All right. Lance, go ahead and state your name and then go ahead and make your presentation.
My name's Lance Meir, Fire Chief in Baldwin. And I'm on the agenda tonight to request permission to adjust the resolution for the $100,000 annual allocation for the fire truck purchase. Instead of purchasing a fire truck this year, we would like to use the money to refurbish / conduct some pretty deep maintenance in 2 fire trucks. The first fire truck is a 1999 Freightliner. It's a fire truck, an engine, and it's in need of some pretty good fire pump repairs. The truck's in good shape. We just need some work done to it, and we think we can get another 10 years out of it easily. The second truck is a 2000 Freightliner heavy rescue truck / service truck. This truck is required to respond to all structure fires as per the PIL rating requirements. And again, that truck's in fairly good shape as well, but it does need some work and some upgrades to be able to maintain the current standards. And that's pretty much it. Anybody got any questions for me?
Mr. Chairman, could you translate a little bit of that for us?
What they are
It's a little bit
requesting,
hard to hear everything.
okay, they're requesting the truck allocation for Baldwin to refurbish, to do upgrades on 2 fire trucks instead of buying a new apparatus. They need maintenance on them. He said pump maintenance and I guess general maintenance on them. I don't know if this done in the past. I know they have a letter from the Fire Association who doesn't oppose this. Mr. Bowe?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the council, every year we have a fire truck allocation that is budgeted, and it's rotated to each fire department every year. And this year is Baldwin's turn to get the allocation. The allocation is $40,000 from $60,000 from the 3/4 cent sales tax fund, and another $40,000 from the gaming fund. And it's always been used to purchase a new fire truck, a fire unit, service unit. And Baldwin is not in a position to purchase a new unit, so they did. It's my understanding that they met with the Fire Association, and officials from the Fire Association went with the Baldwin officials and reviewed and looked at and inspected their trucks to determine exactly what improvements they would make to make sure that the funds would go to refurbish the trucks in a manner that they will get the additional 10 years as Chief Meir has stated. So I think their request with support from the Fire Association is that the council pass a motion to approve their request that the $100,000 allocation may be used for repairs and refurbishment in lieu of Baldwin Fire Department purchasing a new unit.
I'll offer that motion.
Okay, got a motion by Reverend Matthews. Have a second? Well, we have a discussion now.
Well, we need a second now that we have a motion.
Do we have a second?
Yeah,
Jay's trying to second.
I'll
His mic
second.
is off.
I second.
Okay, Jay seconded it. Okay, discussion, Mr. Bennett?
Well, you answered 90% of my question. The question I have, when we allocate this money, each fire
James.
department,
Get close to you, Mike.
each fire department, is not like Morgan City, Bayou Vista? What portion does the cities put in this? Any?
Well, yeah, because we put up 100,000, as you know, a new truck is probably nowadays, it's my understanding, running anywhere from, could run up to $350,000, $400,000.
Right.
And most of the times now, the departments are using our 100,000 for a down payment, and they're financing the balance over so many years.
So we're not the only one footing the bills?
Oh, no, definitely,
no.
no, this is just
That's my
a
biggest
percentage of it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I might add, this was actually brought up at one of the association meetings, and in discussion, again, because the major concern here is making sure that we're not throwing good money away. So one of the criteria here was that the association had to sign off on it, and again, the association is the rest of the fire departments in the parish, sign off on it and make sure that the improvements that we're making were beneficial, that they're not necessarily putting $100,000 in an old piece of equipment that is not going to be worth anything in 5 years. So with the association signing off on it, I think it's something great for a smaller fire department like Baldwin, who doesn't have the money to buy a new truck, to refurbish these other trucks, and I think it's a good thing.
Well, it is a good thing. I just
Yes.
want to make sure we're not the only one footing the bill.
Yes, sir.
I mean, times are fixing to get rough here, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Any other
Yeah,
discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
One more comment, and Chief Mears, this is from the administration standpoint. It goes back to a comment Councilman Hebert made at the last meeting concerning, with his concerns to our revenue streams and our budget. I would ask that the chief, you know, if this gets approved, assuming this gets approved tonight, that we maybe wait a few months to determine and see how the parish's finances are going and the revenues are going, because, as I said, a big portion of this is from the gaming fund, so, you know, we're due to get that payment from the Riverboat Gaming, the Riverboat in June. So I haven't had any discussions with them, but we want to see how our sales taxes are going and make sure that, you know, we're going to have the funds to be able to fund this appropriately. So if Chief Mears, if it gets approved, I'd ask you to just, you know, communicate with me on maybe some timelines on getting some of this work done.
Yeah, certainly, no problem. And just let you guys know, we were due the money last year, but we switched with Franklin because Franklin was in a position to buy a new truck. So we decided to swap years, and the association agreed on that. So actually last year was our year, and we were banking on a FEMA grant because we applied for a $425,000 FEMA grant to buy a new unit. We were not awarded that grant, so here we are now, another year later, and now it's time to do something. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that we're not sitting on our hands, and we're trying to do everything we can to make the money work for us. I think this is going to be a good, solid plan, and I think it would get us to the next point.
Any other comments?
I got one more, I got a question that came over Facebook.
Okay.
Can you recall when's the last time Morgan City got this money, Morgan City Volunteer Fire Department? Morgan?
Speaking to Mike.
I thought I was.
Yeah.
Morgan City Volunteer Fire Department, do you recall?
Get close to the mic.
My belly won't let me.
No, I'd have to, we have a published list. I don't have it in front of me, but I'd have to look to see
That's fine.
where they're at on the list.
Yeah, if you don't mind, let me know, because I just got a
James,
question over.
I can answer some of that. The volunteers in Morgan City doesn't get the allocation. The city gets the allocation.
Right.
Because they provide the fire protection.
Okay.
The volunteers they run rescue. That's how it's worked in the past.
So the city, it goes straight to City of Morgan City,
Yes.
it's up to the mayor and council to
Yes.
determine it? Okay,
Yes.
I'll get with them both.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, I see this is actually listed under item E on the new business. Can we move on?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, we are
yeah.
gonna move it up.
Yeah.
All right, well, he already made the motion to do this, so that's moves the next step. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, Mr. Lance, we finished.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, we were under public comment, I think.
Yes.
So we hadn't even gotten to this issue.
Right.
So I don't know whether it's proper to move on it now.
Well, we're gonna move it up right now, we'll redo it.
Pardon me?
So, we're gonna move up item 16E.
Chairman, can I comment?
Yes.
I would appreciate if, I don't know if you see us raising our hand, but I continue to do it and we're not getting called on. Do we just butt in and comment when we want to comment? Or do you want to have order to this?
Well, they have a button for you to put your hand on.
I've been pressed it numerous times. When you keep saying comment and I keep doing it.
I don't see the hand coming up.
So
Put
you're
my
not
hand
seeing
on.
it right there?
Now it is, now it's up.
Yeah, it's there.
That's the first
Okay,
time.
okay. Yeah, I've done it quite a few times. I was gonna make the same comment if this is under comments while we vote on this.
Well, yeah, we messed up.
Okay.
Okay. So, after public comment is closed, we're gonna move item 16E up on the agenda now.
And you ask if
Ms. Lee, you wanna read that in the?
Well, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, you hadn't gotten the public comment. This is just a guest on your agenda.
Okay, yes,
This is guest. Public comment is after the guest.
right.
But this is, since Chief Mears was on the phone and he was a guest, and item 16E pertains to Chief Mears' request. I think the chairman thought it was a good idea that while the discussion had just taken place, that it would be an opportunity for the council to consider and vote on the item at this time.
And if appropriate, Mr. Chairman, for my motion to reflect moving the item up on the agenda to accommodate such, then let my motion stand as such.
Okay,
It wouldn't be the first time we've done so.
okay. Mr. J, you still want a second?
I
Okay.
second.
Got a motion by Mr. Matthews, second by Mr. Imer. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Next up is, public comment. Anybody from the public wants to speak or call in?
Okay, thank you.
Let me state that phone number for the record. If anyone would like to call in, you may call in if you would like to speak public here at the public, under the public comment. This would be on any action items that is included in our agenda today. You can only speak on action items today. Our phone number is 337-828-4100, extension 517. And we'll give you a few minutes to call in if you want to speak on any action item that's on the agenda tonight. Thank you. Is he here to speak? He should have signed in. Yeah, but he still needs to sign in, so we can have his name for the record. If he wants to sign in and speak, this would be fine.
Did you want to speak?
Yes. Oh, you don't want to speak?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yes. We always make sure we double it up, let him sign in still. Okay, great.
All right, with no one calling in, we'll move right along. Report from Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, council, and everyone that's viewing at home. I want to make sure I'm speaking loud enough. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because I've been told they can't hear me, so I'm going to try to get really close to this microphone and speak up. A couple of things I want to state. First of all, I want to wish everyone a belated Happy Mother's Day. I hope everyone had a good weekend this last weekend. It was great weather, and hope you had a good time with your family. The next thing I want to touch base on is on Monday, the governor basically lifted some of his restrictions on the economy of Louisiana. And with that, for the majority of it is, of course, is 25% capacity on restaurants and the different areas he lifted. He still had two items that were not allowed, which were pretty much massage parlors and tattoo shops or tattoo parlors. But other than that, I've had a lot of people ask me about what do I think about the 25%. Even though I'm thankful that we opened up to 25% capacity, I wish it was more. I was really hoping for more towards 50%, where our businesses can try to get back to business and actually start making money and recouping from the last couple of months we're having forward. But I am hopeful for at least doing that in phase one, and hopefully it'll continue, and we'll go from there. Also, I want to announce on Monday, the 18th, the courthouse will be open to the public for essential business. And when I state that, essential business, please come, and if you have essential business at the courthouse, with any agency within the courthouse. Now, you're still required to contact that agency. And when I say agency, I'm referring to the parish, sheriff's office, clerk of court, assessor, those agencies within. You still have to call them and make an appointment, or at least figure out what their restrictions are. Because each agency is going to do their own set of restrictions on how they're going to conduct business from here on out. So again, starting on the 18th, it'll be opened up in that capacity. I'm also going to be sharing my report again, Mr. Chairman, as I did before. I'm going to be sharing it with Homeland Security Director David Nakan, also with the coroner, Dr. Eric Melanson, and we'll open it up to some questions from the media that are here right now that might have questions for any one of us going forward. So right now, I want to start that off, and David Nakan, Homeland Security Director, if you come to the podium.
Good evening. Thank y'all for allowing us to come. Got some good news. On Monday, May the 4th, we tested 96 first responders in the parish, and today we got the last bit of results. All 96 first responders were tested negative, not one positive. So they're doing the right thing. They obviously have it going. They're using their PPEs properly, apparently. And of course, it's not 100% on, we didn't get 100% testing, but the ones that showed up were negative, which I think is a great sign. I've notified the chiefs and the sheriff. Of course, I'd like to thank the sheriff and his guys for helping us facilitate the Bayou Vista Community Center. Currently, we're in these community-based testing sites. It's a little mobile site. We've done 6 sites to date, around 180 tests on all 6 sites inclusive total. And it appears that the next step is going to be more for the congregate setting groups, which is nursing homes, jails, and other places along those lines that I think the mandate's coming that they're going to require X amount of testing in those facilities. So they're going to need some of the kits. Again, the kits themselves have been the issue up till now, but certainly there are more test kits available, but certainly not to the level that we think it's going to be needed. At the end of the day, I would tell people in general, one of our issues with the community-based testing sites is results. We cannot get the results that we want. 50 tests were given in Franklin last Wednesday. I thought it was set up to where we would be notified. I didn't want names, I wanted positives and negatives, because if the negatives were 3 out of 50, I think that would have been a great thing. I think the city of Franklin would want to know that. If the results were 48 positives, I think the city would want to know that as well. They will not give us that information. They have not yet. It's been very frustrating. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, it's almost criminal that we can't get, in this day and time, we can put somebody on the moon, but they can't break out a spreadsheet and give me what 50 test results were in each of the locations that we've used. So I think it's, at this point, we raised a lot of heck on the phone today. But at the end of the month, we're not going to have those testing sites here anyway, which is really only 10 more days left of the testing sites. And it appears that the hot zones right now are going to be the northeast and the northwest corridors of the state, as well as there's some around Alexandria that's requesting these sites. So I'll feel pretty confident we're going to probably lose the mobile testing site parish-wide pretty soon. We called off tomorrow's testing. The weather was going to be an issue. The way we set it up, it's a lot of outside, tabletop. Just can't take a chance on getting wet. So we have actually canceled Thursday and Friday as normal days of testing in the mobile test site. I will say that on the reopening of the business community, we have gotten a lot of calls, what about my business? What about my business? The best way to go is the website of opensafely.la.gov. opensafely.la.gov, because you register your business, restaurant, bar room, casino, whatever you are, you register your business, and once you do, anytime the rules change, you will be notified via email. And it also tells you, restaurant, that you're going to have your tables 10 foot apart, and you're going to have this, and the employees got to wear PPE. It explains all of that. They don't have a general rule because everybody's business is a little different. So if you will go on, if you have a question, if you're a business, I don't know where I fall, opensafely.la.gov, put your business in, register your business, and they'll tell you exactly what you need to do and exactly the rules you'll have to follow to allow to continue opening. The restaurants I have talked to on the 25% rule, restaurant-wise, if you require 10 feet between tables, they're not going to have trouble with the 25% rule, I don't think, because it's going to really cut down on how many people they'll have in their business, and it does not include the outside seating areas that they had pre-up. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting tomorrow to see exactly what the governor's the governor's emergency order will say, because we want to read that obviously and get the exact verbiage before we get too far along. On the rest of it, we're still handing out PPEs. If you are a medical office in the healthcare facility business of any stretch, hospice, home care, the PPE hotline that's been established, you can get direct PPE supplies from them. And of course, while you're waiting for those supplies, we can help fill that little void. What's happened on the vendor list for a dentist office, let's say, is the dentist office might buy 100 N95s a month. Well, now they need 300. But the vendors will only sell them what they have been buying, 100 at a time. And it's just not, sometimes it's not enough. So we certainly can fill the little gaps in until they can get their PPE supplies that they request. And then finally, like we needed this, right? Hurricane season's here. We're going to start our hurricane preparedness meetings. We have the first one scheduled for next Tuesday. It'll be Zoomed or somehow telecast through at the Port of Morgan City office. I don't know the exact details, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be a Zoom meeting or some kind of virtual meeting. We're not going to meet at the office. Everybody's going to do their thing from behind closed doors. And on that topic, I will say we've been asked a lot. The normal questions we get every year: what do we do? What do we do? Getagameplan.org. If you go on that website, there's a little block on the right-hand side that tells you what supplies you need to have, what plan you need to make, take care of your pets, take care of your valuables. And it's really a good site. They have improved it dramatically over the last couple of years. I would strongly suggest to anybody, getagameplan.org, and that'll pretty much tell you exactly where or the items that you need to try to get prepared for hurricane season. Certainly we don't need one on top of this. Where everybody is struggling statewide, and it's probably more so for the South, because you know hurricanes affect us probably a little bit more than the other northern parishes. But our northern parishes are where we send our evacuees, and it's really has been touchy as far as whether they're going to accept them as we've done in the past. We are working on that right now. We do not have a real solid plan. We think we're still in good shape, but of course everybody wants to see how phase one's going to work. Is there going to be a big bounce up in numbers, or what's going to happen? And hopefully by the time we get into the middle of hurricane season, we'll have those things work. I think we'll have them worked out probably by the 1st of June, but I hate saying that because I'm not 100% sure. But that is a concern statewide, not just here. And certainly, you know, we have a concern because we send our groups to Rapides Parish Coliseum, us and Lower St. Martin. So, yes.
Yeah, David, as far as that's concerned, as far as our shelter, and again, I think Councilman Ina has a question too, but as far as that's concerned, how are we going to handle that shelter situation right now? If we have a hurricane, are we aware of that? Or are they preparing for that? In 2 weeks, we have a hurricane.
The state of Louisiana has told us that in the event if something happens tomorrow and we don't have a firm where we're going to send them, they will provide the space and they'll also provide the transportation. In the event we don't have that, you know, we have that plan in place, to use our school buses and the drivers and whatever. But in the event something happens tomorrow, the state says they will take care of us. And of course, the PPE and all the problems we've had with the COVID is unlike a hurricane where you might have 6 or 7 coastal parishes, involved. And it's all 64 parishes are involved on this one, and that's been one of our challenges on the resource side.
Mr. J, you have a question?
Yes, sir. Mr. Nakan, I was just curious. Of course, we know St. Mary Parish School Board is the largest employer in the parish. We only have about 7 or 8 days left in this school session. Has there been any conversation about the potential opening of school in August? I think the tentative date for August for school is somewhere around August the 6th or so. That's less than, 70 days or so away from us. Has there been any conversation as far as the potential for opening up of schools?
Mr. Heiner, we have not had any direct conversation with anyone on the state level, and certainly the local level, I think, is waiting on state leadership on that to have any kind of date set up. I do know for a fact that Monday, the St. Mary school system is going to require all school teachers to return to work, which actually has an impact on our community-based testing, our mobile sites. But I think, again, we've got a plan to work around all of that. But as far as what's going to happen in October, I think everybody's kind of waiting to see what's going to happen by June the 1st with this little phase 1 opening. So, but to answer your question, sir, no, I do not have any direct information on that.
Thank you, Mr. Nakan.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Nakan?
Thank you. Thank you.
Dave. Appreciate it. Dr. Melanson, are you prepared?
Yes, sir, I'm prepared.
Okay, Dr. Melanson, go ahead.
If y'all, as far as update on COVID-19 statistics, in April, we had 61 deaths reported to the coroner's office. 25 were COVID-19 related. Thus far in May, we've had 14 deaths. Of those, 3 are COVID-19 related, for a total of 28 deaths here in St. Mary Parish since April 8th. There are 2 or 3 that are potentials that were listed as probable. As you see on the state website, they have a number underneath that. The deaths that are possible COVID related, we had 3 of them that actually fell into that category. If you look around our region, Region 3, per capita, we are at the lowest, which is good as far as total number of cases. St. Mary Parish is only 1 step ahead of Assumption as far as total number of cases. Assumption, of course, having about 40% of the population of St. Mary Parish, our capita data is significantly less. The state is reporting 26 deaths. Of course, we have had 28, which there is some lag in reporting, which has been worked on for, 8 weeks now. And again, it's still a little bit slow, but again, it's fairly accurate. Overall, I think we're doing pretty good. I think the leadership here in the parish has done very well at promoting the social distancing and the stay-at-home order, and I think that's what's flattening our curve. I do have concerns about the opening of things, but I realize it's a necessity. I would ask that the council endorse a program where everyone wear a mask. Because if you look at the statistics, if someone with COVID-19 is not wearing a mask, even and they interact with somebody who is COVID-19, the chance of that person who does not have COVID-19 is almost 70%, even if that person is wearing a mask. Whereas if a COVID-19 person is wearing a mask and the person who is COVID-19 free is not, the chance goes down to about 5 to 6%. If both people are wearing masks, it drops to about 1%. So obviously there's a need for masks amongst everyone in the community. I know my office is sporting masks. I sport masks out in the community myself, and I would ask that everyone do the same. Overall, I think y'all are more interested in the nursing home situation. Currently, we still have Legacy of Morgan City, which is free of disease. Patterson Healthcare had one person who went to Osher St. Mary for an unrelated illness and tested positive. That person was retested twice on different methodology and was negative on both occasions, so it was felt to be a false positive. Legacy took the steps before the state guideline came out and said that they tested 30% of the population of the nursing home, including the roommate and other close contacts. They also tested 30% of the staff, including the ones in direct contact. All of those were negative. There was one staff member who did test positive but did not report to work, had felt bad and followed the protocol set forth over at Patterson and stayed home and was referred to their primary care physician where they were tested and was positive. The state has asked for what they call an ICAR, which is in place and is looking forward to some testing. Currently, it's not a mandate to any of the nursing homes to do so. That's an option for them. Patterson felt that they have sufficed with the testing that they've already done and have had no further issues. So rather than go ahead and proceed with testing everyone every other day, they decided to forego that for now. That may change if things change for Patterson. Maison Jardin also reports no cases. Franklin, of course, Legacy of Franklin, currently they had 49 patients residents who weren't tested as of Sunday a week ago. I took it upon myself, even though I disagreed with testing asymptomatic patients, to go and test them at my own risk. Of those, we tested 50 patients. One test was a patient who was previously negative, but had contact with a family member who was an employee there who had tested positive. And of the 50, one test, the tube had broken, so they couldn't use the test. But they had 18 tests that were positive out of 49 tests that were available to be tested. Those patients have been moved into another quarantine area, which is becoming difficult because of the thing. But overall, they currently have 49 positive patients in-house, 38 negative. There are 10 people in hospitals who are COVID positive, and there are 14 deaths overall at Legacy and Franklin. I've worked with them regularly. They have adequate PPE. They continue to employ all the protocols that they've set forth. Mr. Nakan and yourself, Mr. Hannegriff, have been very good at assisting them in getting those PPE and requirements, as well as the state. So their plan is intact and in place, and hopefully the other 38 won't pick it up. But it's comforting to know that the people are getting it and actually not having too bad of an issue for the most part, especially in such close confines.
Thank you, Dr. Melanson. Right now, if any council members have any questions, I'll ask you to ask those questions if you can right now, and then we'll open it up to the media.
Mr. Matthews?
Yes. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Melanson and others, of course, this is particularly concerning to me, not just because of the nursing home, but it's apparent that while some of the numbers may have subsided a bit across the nation and across our state's landscape, it is painfully evident that we are still dealing with a very fluid problem. And I'm particularly concerned as we move in a direction of opening, quote unquote, opening things up. Councilman Ina just raised a very, very sensitive and very, very serious question about the projected reopening of schools. Although we know that, school is done for this current session, but there is a new phrase that is catching on that some of you may have heard of and may be familiar with. I'm sure Dr. Malonson, both you and Dr. Rink are familiar with pediatric multi-symptom inflammatory syndrome. And Louisiana is one of the states that has been identified with an elevating rate of this pediatric multi-symptom inflammatory syndrome, which they are linking to COVID-19. And so this is particularly concerning to me because as we have older adults that are testing positive, whom obviously care for younger children in their homes and in their neighborhoods, and these children, I don't think children have ever stopped moving around, and I don't think children have ever obeyed or been forced to obey the stay-at-home order. And so as we have this increasing number of children that are presenting with symptoms that are related to COVID-19, and it has been also evident to me as a parent of a St. Mary Parish school student that our school system is certainly falling well behind in having, in my opinion, adequate response measures to this pandemic, and particularly as we try to chart the course for what our future is going to look like in St. Mary Parish and surrounding. I have growing concerns, and I know that this is not something that any one office or individual or even group can answer or address, because there are just so many unknowns. And I just want to caution us as we move forward in the direction of trying to reestablish and reinvigorate and stimulate our economy by opening things up, that we take into consideration that there are developing elements of this disease every day. And I just don't hear us talking about those things. And so I just want to make that point. Is anybody familiar with pediatric multi-symptom inflammatory syndrome?
Mr. Matthews, I will tell you, I think your points are valid, and I think the concern is there. Fortunately, overall, from COVID-related illness, children have been relatively spared. Now they're looking at this new disease process that they believe is COVID related, but I don't think, just like COVID-19, we don't have enough information yet to actually place that blame on COVID. I think the concerns for reinstituting kids in the schools and organization of gatherings and things like that are always going to be a concern, because in the process of flattening the curve, if everyone would have done what they were supposed to from the get-go, we would have been finished with this within, a month or 6 weeks. And we're 8-9 weeks into the process, and that process is still ongoing, and we don't see an anticipatable end to it or foreseeable end for probably several months. And as we reopen things, we expect more people to get the disease, and hopefully it won't overwhelm our system to the point where we don't have hospital beds and ventilators and all those things we talked about early on. I think we've done a pretty good job. I think the school board had no option, and their responsibility was to close the schools, which they did. Unfortunately, it's our own responsibility to adhere to the advice that Governor Edwards put out there for us in the stay-at-home order and Proclamation 25, 27, and 30. But if we don't do that and we don't enforce it, then ultimately we're going to continue to have disease. I would like to see us take those steps, like I said, as far as asking everyone to wear a mask. I think with members of the council and their representative districts, we can help curtail some of that, and again, continue to encourage hand washing techniques and the like that's been ongoing for the last 2 months. I do think that if we continue to be diligent, we will settle this out, and again, we'll see a whole lot more related illnesses attributable to the COVID-19 outbreak than anybody ever knew. We're going to have to lead that to the scholars who are good at doing all this research and guidance, and help provide more guidance to us so that we have a better plan. As far as things like nursing homes and stuff, I'm sure there'll be a lot of points hit at the next legislative session in the state to help improve the quality of care delivered and reduce the risk of spread of diseases like COVID-19 or influenza or whatever other virus that winds up taking its place the next time, which hopefully will be 20, 30 years from now. But I think ultimately the process has been a process that's one that has been broken in some respects, but it's a learning process. I think people are doing what they're supposed to try and help the process and working very diligently to do so. So again, we still have a lot to learn. I think you're exactly right that we're going to find out a whole lot more about the process as we get more educated about it, and I think we'll do better the next time. Which I'm hoping that's good enough for everybody else, because it's going to have to be, because that's all we have.
Mr. Ramsey?
Thank you, Doctor.
Mr. Ramsey?
Yes, sir. Dr. Malasa, in your own opinion, what is the point to which we would have to reach before you would feel comfortable in saying, okay, we can open up the parish fully for business as usual? Where do we have to go for you to be able to say that's what we can do?
I missed part of your question. It kind of blanked out. Could you repeat the question again, please?
Yes. In your opinion, what is the point we would have to reach before you would personally be comfortable in saying it would be okay for us to open up St. Mary Parish to business as usual?
I think you would have to continue to see a progressive trend towards, lower numbers of new cases, where our doubling time gets out to the 14-day process, to the 14 plus. If you look at the German model, before they shut things down, the doubling time of people with disease going from, if you had 10 people, how long would it take to get to 20 was a little less than 3 days. When they did their first closing of schools and all sports related activities, after 7 days, that time went to 5.5 days. So a significant improvement. And so then they closed everything down for another week, and then the doubling time went to a little over 12 days. Again, we would have probably shut everything down, literally everything, for 2 weeks, and basically had everybody make sure you got all your stuff together and stay home. We probably would almost be done with this, but that's really not a feasible alternative, knowing our communities and the needs of the community. I think we're going to have to continue to practice what we've been preaching for the last 8 weeks. And I think you'll continue to see a trend towards normalcy, but I don't see where you can honestly say that you're not going to spread disease in the very near future. I think you're going to be required to open things up. I think people are going to take their own risk to go out and into public. I do think there's ways to help minimize that risk. I think to open things up fully is going to be difficult, but I'll leave it to the guidance of the experts at the CDC and our state, and let them kind of figure out what would be best. Personally, I think we're on the right track, and I think, opening some things will give us an idea, and I think I call it a soft opening, is going to give us a really good idea over the next, 7 to 14 days if that was the right thing to do. Again, there's a lot of unanswered questions, just as I was explaining to Reverend Matthews, and we're going to learn as this process goes. By opening things up fully, I think would have been a strong mistake that we weren't going to be able to pay that bill. And I think right now, I think everything is on the right track, and I'd like to see more things open up, but I think we need to do it very cautiously. And I think the business owners need to be aware that, granted, it may not affect them directly as far as illness, And we understand the business ramifications that's happened, but they may pass something to someone else and it may kill them. And we certainly don't want that. I don't want to see another COVID-19 death if I can help it in the rest of my life, because 28 is too much in 30 days. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I think we're on the right track. It's just going to take some time. And I think we need to talk about it and discuss it and see what our numbers show so that we can actually have a educated discussion on what's next.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions?
Okay. Chairman, if we can, media, if y'all have any questions y'all want to ask of myself, David, or Dr. Melanson, now would be the opportunity.
I do have a question, President Handgriff.
Yes, sir.
Are there any guidelines in your mandate that are still in effect, or are you lifting those with phase 1 starting on Friday?
Actually, my mandate that are still in effect right now are basically the mandates as far as capacity of stores, which was 35%. Also, the mandate of one buggy, one person. Now, that one buggy, one person, if you've been out, you see it's not being enforced at all. Along with what Dr. Melanson is saying, that is still in effect. Because of the 25% capacity, 35% of course is more. And I think, and again, I'm not trying to be hypocritical here. When people talk about masks, you know, when I'm out in public, I personally, as my choice, because of where I'm at and what I'm doing, don't necessarily wear a mask. I wear a mask when I'm around medical, as far as hospital and things of that nature. But again, it's about a common sense approach. Okay, I understand the aspects of being safe. Of course, I want everyone to be safe. Again, practicing. Today we had a groundbreaking, for instance, right now in Franklin with the park, the Pocket Park. And of course, we had individuals that were not necessarily 6 feet apart. You know, I was not wearing a mask like several others. There are times when that's not, you know, practical, of course. So you got to look at that and you got to take it in perspective. As far as the mandates, I do believe that the stores really aren't doing what they need to do and they need to step it up. I'm not going to name them out specifically as far as the stores, but that does need to be looked at and revisited as far as, again, not everyone, you don't have to bring 6 people to the store, again, right now. So that is still in effect going forward as of now.
That question was asked by Mr. Bertie Barr. Any other questions, Mr. Howard?
Okay.
Ms. Wills?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yeah, Dr. Melanson, the question I'd like to ask again is, can you give me a count on how many people we have currently in the hospital, ICU, and respirators currently?
I know over at Osher St. Mary, we have one COVID-19 patient on a respirator. There are 3 in-house. Over at Franklin Foundation, I think there's 9 COVID patients, none of them on respirators. Hold on, let me give you the...
There's one.
They have one in Lafayette and one in Truro. Those are Franklin Foundation, I'm sorry, those are Legacy of Franklin residents who are sicker, obviously, and I believe, I'm not sure if both of them are on a vent or just one. And the rest, like I said, they have 12 total, so 10 over at Franklin Foundation, not 9. I apologize.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on along.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Bo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. You have my report. The items are informational. Again, presenting information from Mr. Jeff Dewey with the Census Bureau. And from our last report at the last meeting, you can see that our response rate in St. Mary Parish has improved. Overall, our response rate for the parish overall is going from 39% to 44%. And the statewide response rate is at 50.8%. National response rate right now is 56%. And each of our 5 municipalities, their response rates has increased as well. So hopefully by continuing to get the word out and talking about it, more and more folks will get around to responding. Just as a matter of information, 10 years ago, the St. Mary Parish overall response rate was at 56%. So hopefully we can reach or exceed that before the census taking is completed. Everything else in my report is informational. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Steiner?
Yeah, Bo, I was contacted by a constituent with some concerns about the dumpster at the Cabot boat landing. Had you heard about that?
Yes, sir. I think it might have been Saturday evening or Sunday. Councilman Hidalgo had texted me with Councilwoman Hidalgo, I apologize, had contacted me with some screenshot of a picture of a lot of the trash around the dumpster at Burgas boat landing. And so first thing Monday morning, we dispatched our trash truck down there to pick up the stuff that was on the ground. Our supervisor, Mr. Davis, accompanied them, and he reported back to me that it was unfortunate, but the actual dumpster was only half full, which tells me that we've got some folks who are not taking the time to throw their trash and debris, mostly, the stuff from crawfishermen and stuff like that, to take the time to throw the stuff inside the dumpster and throw it on the ground. And once, the first couple of people throw it on the ground, the others are going to follow because they say, well, I guess this is where you throw your trash. So, but and currently in this last month and probably through the end of this month is the busiest crawfish season. So at all of our boat landings, there's a tremendous amount of activity, mainly from folks crawfishing because, it is a good season right now and a lot of folks may be laid off or furloughed at home, so they're out crawfishing as well. So we monitor our boat landings daily. At a minimum, check them about times a week, and when we do see situations like you're referring to, we do dispatch our trash trucks to make sure we get out and clean up any mess that was thrown on the ground. And we also in constant communication with Pelican Waste to ensure that they're doing their due diligence on emptying those containers on the days that they're required to empty them.
Let me ask you a question, Boo. Do you think that there's a need for another dumpster or additional dumpsters during crawfish season because there's an increased amount of volume in and out of the boat landing and using those dumpsters just during crawfish season? Sure. Do you think there's a need for an additional can just for that period?
Well, and that may help. In the past, we have not experienced that was the need. It's more about compliance by those using the boat ramp to throw their stuff in the dumpster. And if the dumpster is full, possibly, saying, well, it's full, maybe I should carry my waste to my house or to another place where I can properly dispose of it and not throw it on the ground. And, we've had some cooperation. The sheriff's office has assisted in trying to also monitor and police that to ensure that the users of the facility are throwing their waste in the dumpsters and not on the ground. So we appreciate that as well. But as I said, we're constantly monitoring it and working to keep up with the volume of it.
Well, I think if we, it's just a suggestion, if we continue to monitor that situation and we continue to see, excess trash, I'd like to suggest or recommend that we try to put another dumpster there for the remainder of crawfish season. And if there still continues to be the problem, then we know that it's not capacity, it's just some citizens that's just not, concerned enough to try to take care of what we have.
Yeah, I fully understand that. And we'll look at it. I'll discuss with Pelican to see if there's anything we can do in that vein.
Good enough.
Yeah, Councilman Ina, of course, myself and you, we talked about it. I've discussed this with Beau LaGrange on this issue here. I even had one person call me about the situation because they got approached when they placed the garbage on the ground. They got approached by the sheriff's office. He was there giving oversight, supervising it. And I asked that individual, I said, okay, well, why did you do that? Or why'd you put it there? And this is an individual I know, I'm not going to name names, but basically because they had other stuff on the ground, that's why he put it there. Now, over the weekend, again, and this always happens, is that you'll get a Facebook post of all this garbage on the ground, and immediately people will start talking about the council, or why aren't we doing what we're doing? Why aren't we picking the garbage up? Well, it can happen in one day. And when it happens on the weekend, we get notified about it. And of course, we jumped on it, like Mr. Bo just stated, first thing Monday morning. But the problem with that was, and in that particular situation, the dumpster was half full, and people continue to put it on the ground. So I want to let all the residents know out there that these boat launches, they're not there. We put the dumpsters out at an increased cost. We know that these boat launches actually cost the parish money. The fees that they put out, what is it, a yearly pass is $30, what dollars? $36 for a yearly pass to put your boat out as many times as you want. Clearly, that does not cover the cost. This is one of those quality of life issues that we basically subsidize as a parish for our citizens. Those same citizens cannot take advantage of the situation. We put dumpsters out there at an increased cost to help the fishermen and help those recreational people that go out and utilize them. But the craft fishermen of St. Mary Parish, please utilize the dumpsters. If there is a problem, if the dumpsters are full or we have an issue, call the courthouse, call Beau Lagrange. We will do what we have to do. We will go there. We'll actually, get Pelican to come and do, instead of once a week, if it's once, do it twice. We will do what we need to do, but please do not put it on the ground. That's all I ask of everyone out there. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bo, is there any posting on the dumpster or nearby that gives contact information of who to call, per se it was actually full and needed to be dumped?
No, there isn't.
Might be helpful.
We could do something like that. Well, of course, it's parish, so I would think, for the most part, someone can call the courthouse and they can find that information quickly, but it probably would not hurt to put something on there to notify or to do that, and that's something we can definitely look into.
If we make it easier for them, they're likely to comply.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, next is item 11. For informational purposes is report of other meetings in the parish. Item 12.
We didn't do 10. Public hearing report, April 22nd.
Oh, yes, yes. Yeah,
10.
public hearing report.
Okay.
One we just finished earlier.
We need no, not earlier. This is from the last meeting.
From the last one.
Yes, we need a motion and a second on the public hearing report, April 22nd, 2020.
I'll make a motion to accept the public hearing.
Got a motion to accept the public hearing from April 22nd. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Bennett. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 11 was for informational purposes. Item 12, introduction of ordinances.
We can still read number 11 because...
I'll move that
anyone
we
has any, wait.
adopt
Okay.
item 11A.
I'm sorry, gentlemen and ladies, let's just go back. 11 is just report of meetings other than council meetings, and we just want to make sure no one has any report.
Questions?
Any report of other meetings. This is where we take that place at. Okay, and then if not, then we'll move on to 12A. I'm going to read it into the record. For introduction is an ordinance authorizing the incurring of debt and issuance of $600,000 of certificates of indebtedness Series 2020 of the Parish of St. Mary, State of Louisiana, prescribing the form, terms, and conditions of such certificates and providing for the payment thereof, authorizing an agreement with the paying agent if required, and providing for other matters in connection therewith relative to the Franklin Sewer Plant Rehabilitation Project. Mr. Ramsey, what is your wishes?
This is introduction.
I was going to move on item 13A.
Okay.
We still on 12A, introduction.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce 12A, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm messing up. My bad, y'all. Just introduction. Thank you.
It's introduction.
I thought we was on the next one. I think Mr. Ramsey thought that also.
We can read them all.
Okay, so Mr. Ina, you moved on 12A.
I'd like to introduce 12A, please.
Thank you, sir. 12B for introduction is an ordinance temporarily moving the location of precincts 38 and 45 for the July 11th, 2020 and August 15th, 2020 elections. Mr. Bennett, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll move on that one.
Okay, thank you. And also, everyone, please, if you look in your packets, there is one more ordinance that we put on long legal paper. It is legal for us to introduce any ordinance as long as we put it out in form. So I'm going to read that into the record. It is an ordinance prohibiting fishing along the Cote Blanche Road and providing penalties for the violation of the same. Anyone would like to introduce?
I'll go ahead and introduce that.
Who does that?
Mr. Orlando.
Okay. That one, 12C. All right.
All right, Ms. Lisa, item 13A.
Thank you, sir. For adoption is an ordinance authorizing the president of St. Mary Parish to enter into a drainage servitude and right-of-way agreement with Christopher G. Little and the drainage servitude and right-of-way agreement with J.D. Towing Incorporated relative to the Victoria Riverside Road.
I move that we adopt the ordinance.
Got a motion by Mr. Ramsey to adopt the ordinance. Do I have a second?
I second.
Got a second by Mr. Bennett. All in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Aye.
Wait, roll call.
This is on item 13A. Reverend Matthews. Is everybody unmuted? Oh, can you unmute everyone for me, please? Hold tight, everyone, till we get you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Reverend Matthews.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ina.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Orlander.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Ramsey. Mr. Ramsey.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Mr. Ramsey.
Did you unmute everybody?
Yeah, but Craig's is causing.
Mr. Ramsey. This is on 13A. Mr. Scott Ramsey.
Are the councilman in the room?
Item 13A.
Everything's backing up.
Whose name are you
Whose
calling?
name are you calling? Yeah, whose name are you calling?
Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rolfe.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Abair.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Duhon.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Hidalgo.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Rink.
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Adams.
Yes.
Thank you. We have 11 A's and the ordinance carries. Thank you.
Item 13B.
For adoption, an ordinance in compliance with ordinance number 1973, Chapter 5, Procedures, Divisions 5.4, General Procedures for Public Hearing, Sections 5.4.2, Zoning, rezonings, zoning map amendments, Mark Abair.
What's going on?
Yeah.
They can't hear.
Craig is getting feedback.
You might have to mute us.
No, Councilman Matthews.
Your mic may not be working.
This keeps popping on and off.
Okay.
Okay, hold tight, everyone. I'm going to reread 13B for the record. This is for adoption. Can everyone hear me? Just give me a thumbs up.
Craig is causing the
Okay, thank you. This is an ordinance in compliance with ordinance number 1973, Chapter 5 Procedures, Divisions 5.4, General Procedures for Public Hearing, Sections 5.4.2, Rezonings, Zoning Map Amendments, Mr. Mark Abair. And everyone, just please hold up. We're going to unmute you. Everybody will be unmuted, and then someone can make the motion for this ordinance.
I'll make a motion for the ordinance.
Got a motion by Dr. Rink to approve the ordinance. Do I have a second? Got a second by Mr. Bennett? Roll call vote?
Yes, sir.
Any discussion?
You ready for discussion?
No, I'm just.
Okay, yeah, I thought you was going to say something.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify what this is about. Mr. Mark Abair approached me the other day.
Rodney, mute Rodney.
With this question.
It's okay.
Sorry, we're getting some feedback. I personally spoke with Mr. Abair the other day in regards to this. It has to do with rezoning the neighborhood to make it appropriate to place a modular home for a family friend. It's on his property, family-owned property. It's actually got similar facilities on the street and in that neighborhood. So it's just a rezoning to allow him to proceed with that. Does anybody have any questions?
Got a motion and a second. roll call.
Yes, sir. Okay, everyone, this is on 13B. Looks like all of y'all are unmuted. Mr. Ina.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Orlander.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Ramsey.
Hold up. Craig. We got to mute Craig. Councilman Matthews.
Okay, Mr. Ramsey.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rolfe.
Let's make it clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Abair.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Duhon.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Hidalgo.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Rink.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Adams.
Yes, ma'am.
And unmute Mr. Reverend.
Un-
Reverend Matthews. Reverend Matthews.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Reverend Matthews, we're having a lot of feedback from your phone. That's probably.
Can you, he needs to lower his.
He said yes, ma'am.
He said yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Say yes, ma'am.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I got it. We have 11 yeas and the ordinance carries. Thank you.
Item 14A.
I'll go ahead and read 14A through D. Oh, I can read the first one, too. It's a proclamation proclaiming the month of May 2020 as Older Americans Month. Mr. Ina, what is your wishes?
I'd like to move on 14A, please.
You want to second it by the council?
Seconded by the council.
I told Craig that we're going to meet him.
Roll call.
Talk with him, put him back and forth.
Okay, this is on 14A, everyone. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Orlander,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Ramsey,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Rolfe,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Abair,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Duhon,
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Hidalgo,
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Rink,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Adams,
Yes, ma'am.
Reverend Matthews, he's got to be unmuted. Reverend Matthews.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. And
Yes.
Mr. Ina.
Yes, ma'am.
We have 11 yeas and the resolution carries. Thank you.
Okay, can you read items 14B through D?
Yes, sir. Thank you. 14B is a resolution adopting and approving the Louisiana Compliance Questionnaire for St. Mary Parish Sales and Use Tax Department as completed for the year ending December 31st, 2019. C is a resolution authorizing the parish president to execute any and all documents relative to submitting claims to the State of Louisiana Department of Treasury's Unclaimed Property Program. And D is a resolution approving and authorizing the parish president to enter into a contract with Eagle Airport Marking Incorporated relative to the Harry P. Williams Memorial Airport Runway Marking Project.
Mr. Chairman, I move for the adoption of items 14B through D in globo.
Okay, we've got a motion by Mr. Ramsey to adopt 14B, C, and D. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second.
A second by Dr. Rink. Roll call.
Any discussion?
Any discussion?
All right. Everybody's okay? Mr. Ramsey,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Rolfe,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Abair,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Duhon,
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Hidalgo,
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Rink,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Adams,
Yes, ma'am.
Reverend Matthews. Thank you, sir. Mr. Ina,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
and Mr. Orlander.
Yes, ma'am.
We have 11 yeas and the resolution carries. Thank you.
All right, 15A.
As per the LARS 38291Z, the St. Mary Parish Council was responsible for submitting a list containing 3 nominations from each of the 8 single-member parish council districts. The governor shall appoint 1 member to represent each district. I received District 5 application from Mr. James Patrick Carinas. What is your wishes, Mr. Rolfe?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to so move to nominate Mr. James Patrick Carinas to the 11th district as my third candidate.
Yes, sir.
Need a second?
I'll second that.
A second by
Abear?
Mr. Abear. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Motion carries.
Perfect. Thank you.
Item 16A. For informational purposes, we received the financial statements. Want to read them?
No, sir, we don't need to read them. We're not going to take any action on
Right.
them.
14B. For informational purposes, discussion on that?
If anyone wants to speak about it.
Discussion on 14B. 16B.
Okay.
Moving right along.
16C.
16C, discussion and action relative to St. Mary Charter Review Committee. Final report, Mr. Ina.
Yes, Chairman. First, I'd like to say a couple things regarding the Charter Review Committee. First, I really want to commend and thank the Charter Review Committee, those members that took their time. It was a long time coming, but they took their time and they really, really went through the charter with a fine-tooth comb, I would say, and they came up with a excellent document that you see before us. So I definitely want to publicly commend them and thank them for all their efforts. This is a 6-page document that we have here. My first issue, or what I'd like to ask, I guess, is how can we, I believe that the public should have an opportunity to look at these findings. I think we need to have transparency in our process and transparency in things that we do. We're going to amend the charter in any type, or change the charter in any type of way. I think our constituents need to be right along with us and see, take a peep, have an idea of what the report contains. So kind of way that we can make this public in any kind of way so our constituents could take a look at it. And if they have any input, they could contact their councilman in their respective area to give any input.
Mr. Website.
That's what I was, Mr. Chairman, I was going to suggest that.
I have a question.
Wait, hold on 1 minute. Mr. Ball's talking.
I was just going to offer that we can post that on the St. Mary Parish website, and we could also post it on our the Homeland Security Facebook page. Just 2 ways to bring it out where the public can access it and view the document.
Well, that sounds good, and I think that'll be the right way to go. Because at the end of the day, if anything is going to change, if we're going to make any changes to the charter, it's going to be our constituents and it's going to be the public that's going to have to vote on it. So I firmly believe in transparency through this whole process. So I agree that that's the whatever kind of way we can get the information out to the public is what we should do in the early stages.
Ms. Ina,
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr. Matthews.
Yeah. My question is, in terms of the process we're going to utilize going forward, before I guess, or in the process of drafting an ordinance to actually put these propositions on a ballot, do we have the option to make additional edits or I guess introduce additional items that the Charter Review Committee may not have thought of or may not have opted to make recommendations on? For example, one of the things I'd like to see the voters consider voting upon is a proposition that would amend the charter, the specific article in the charter that would allow any councilman or woman, any council member from all 11 districts to be considered for election of officers for the council, chairman, vice chairman, and the like. Not just the at-large members, but I think it's time for this charter to change in many regards, in many respects, and that is definitely one. So I think the voters should be able to consider that. And that's one example of several other areas that I think perhaps need to be looked at more closely and considered for an amendment. So my question is, are we going to implement a process that will, or a part of this process that will allow us to make those additional edits and or recommendations to become propositions on the ballot?
Mr. Chairman, if I could interject for a second. Rev, that's an excellent point. I was going to bring that up next. I was going to suggest that the council, all councilmen and women, take a look at the report. If they have not looked at it yet, take a look at the report. This will give us an opportunity to make it public to all of our constituents and give them an opportunity to look it over and refer any feedback to their respective councilmen. And I don't think it should be limited to what the items that are in the report. You know, that's kind of an it's a ad hoc committee, so to speak. And I think that any part of the charter would be up for fair game. I think this is the recommendation, a lot of good recommendations, but I don't think that's the end all of what could, should be considered. So my suggestion would be, that if it's not included, bring that forward as we go along in the process to be considered. That's just my opinion.
Mr. Ramsey.
So how do we do that going forward?
Mr. Ramsey?
Oh, he's muted.
Hold
Hold on,
Ramsey.
Mr. Ramsey.
Hold on, Mr. Ramsey.
Sorry, I was going to ask our legal counsel, Mr. Duplantis, if he could, to give us a breakdown of the procedure from this point that's going to be needed to, as Mr. Anna said, get this matter on the ballot. Where do we go from here? What steps do we follow?
Well, the steps to amend the charter exist in the charter. And so the first thing, the committee that was gave these recommendations was an advisory committee. So Councilman Anna is correct. So you're not limited to only those things which were taken up by the Charter Review Commission. You could tweak it. You could change it completely. The process is that each individual councilman can submit for the approval of the council whichever changes they want. We'll have to put that in the form of an ordinance, and the council votes on each one individually, and it takes a 2/3 vote of the council to pass a potential change in the charter, and it goes before the voters. It's like any other ordinance for adoption, except that it takes a 2/3 vote. And so it might be a good idea, as Councilman Arnott talked about, to have some sort of consensus before this happens by having some public hearings, because otherwise you could have 35 potential changes, and no one could really understand what's going on. So you might want to try to reach a consensus by having some public hearings, and now is a very difficult time to have legitimate public hearings because of the COVID-19 situation. But Mr. Ramsey, that's the procedure is basically just after somebody on the council has to make a proposal, we put it in the form of an ordinance, and the council votes on it.
Thank you, Mr. Duplantis.
Mr. Chair. This question's for you, Mr. Duplantis. Also, if we decide on changes and that 2/3 vote happens, then does the change go on the ballot in totality, or is it as individual changes? Because we all know that a lot of times passing it in totality, if there's one item that the public does not agree with, the entire change isn't going to happen. So is it individualized on the ballot, or is it a total change in the charter as one entity?
Eric wants to know if y'all still need him.
Mr. Eric?
I'm sorry, if there was a question, I missed it. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to repeat it. So if we're going to make multiple changes, so there's 3 dozen potential changes according to what the advisory committee has put forth. If each of those individual changes are voted on and approved of by that 2/3 of the council, does that go on the ballot as a total change in the charter, or are each individual changes put separately to vote on the charter? Because we know as totality, there may be 1 or 2 things that are not agreed upon, so the entire thing's not gonna pass in the ballot.
That would be up to the council to determine whether or not you wanted to make a package of changes that would require 1 vote of the people, or you could have 35 changes, each requiring 35 votes of the people. That depends upon the final context of the ordinance that gets passed by the council. Y'all could do it whichever way y'all want it. You have to be very careful, because if you have multiple changes, some could conflict with the other ones, and so you have to. And if they both pass, we'd be in a fix. So you have to take care if you're not going to have an in global vote. If you're going to have a vote on each individual item, you have to make sure that they don't conflict with each other.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, to address Dr. Rink, my personal opinion would be for individual changes. If there are some that we could put together, I think we may look at putting some together. But as far as in the spirit of transparency for our constituents, I would not want any of our constituents to feel like we're trying to slip something past them, so to speak. So if it would take multiple individual changes with some pairing or some packaging, small packaging, I would be in favor of doing that. But I just feel like if we're going to move forward, we need to be as clear and concise and as transparent as we possibly can to our constituents, so everybody can be fully aware of what the change is going to be. And when they cast their vote, that they're fully aware of what they're voting for, and we get the true consensus of our constituents. That's just my opinion.
Mr. Bowe?
Yeah, Dr. Rink and members of the council, just from a historic perspective, previous councils who have put propositions for charter amendments before the public has typically done them as separate. Each item or change, recommended change, has been a separate proposition, so that it's not in globo where, you know, some folks may vote against it because they don't like one item in it. So the most recent one was when we had the term limit charter change for council and term limit for parish president and the salaries. Those were 4 different propositions. And so the public could vote on each one on its own merits. So I would think that would be the way the council would want to consider going with that.
And my next question, Mr. Bowe, you may be able to answer this, is the cost for this. Is there a cost for dividing this up?
Sure. Yeah, the cost for voting any election is the entity that is having the election bears the cost. So that is why, you know, that the council also wants to look at the various election dates and determine, a high turnout election which probably means there's more items on the ballot or more things where the cost is shared by more entities, is what I'm trying to say. For instance, when we had the parish, we had a special election for an at-large council seat several years ago, and we were the only item on the ballot. That was a $100,000 cost to the parish. So you definitely want to look at an election date that has multiple items on the ballot so that the cost can be shared.
Any other discussion?
They're not making any action to do anything. Yes. Yep. D is discussion and action relative to the NACO Online Leadership Academy. Dr. Rink, would you like to explain this?
Sure, I would love to.
And they all have it in their packets.
So everybody may be familiar with these type of training programs. Ms. Hidalgo is actually undergoing the Leadership St. Mary program as we currently speak, or as we were speaking prior to COVID. The Leadership Academy that NACO puts on is based on General Colin Powell's principles that he feels has guided him, has guided the book that he's created. So this is multiple different leaders in the entire nation that put together this program. It's been offered to us as a council for a while now, probably through email correspondences mostly, through NACO. It was also introduced to us when we went to the conference in DC, which Mr. Abear and I both showed a good bit of interest and potentially participating in it. There is a scholarship per se. It's if you start sending participants in, NACO will take some off of the course cost. I'd like to be the first one to do this program if no one opposes it or if no one else has any interest. I think I've polled pretty much everyone that I knew had interest prior or had displayed interest, and Mr. Abear respectfully declined participating in it at current. But I'd like to proceed ahead since this starts in August. I have turned in the registration already. I just need basically approval and no objection from the council to be the member to receive the first scholarship to put forth to the cost. If I have to take on the cost of the remaining portion myself without any council approval, then I'm okay with doing that.
Can you state the cost for them?
The total cost is just under $2,000 for the entire course. The first scholarship offered is $1,500, so there's a $500 cost still to participate for the first participant, and there are additional scholarships that are offered for the additional participants after the first. I think they're at either $300 or $500 a piece. So there's still a substantial cost savings. So if multiple of us wanted to participate, we could split the scholarship cost if that's what everyone so chooses.
If we need a form of a motion, I would have no problem putting that motion to allow Dr. Parish to accept that scholarship.
You want her to pay for the cost, or you want the council, the parish to pay for the cost?
But it's my understanding they offer you the scholarship. Is that correct?
That covers $1,500 of it, and they have $500 left. That either the participant pays or the parish picks up the remaining $500.
I got you. Okay. I thought it was my understanding that Dr. Prejean was going to pay the additional $500.
Okay.
Is that, what are you asking for, Doctor? You asking?
No, I will pay for it if the council does not pick up the cost.
Bo, is that something that we could even do?
Yeah, I think this would fall under a legitimate expense of the council because it is a training for council members, but I would also defer to Eric in case he wanted to add any comments to that.
Eric, your mic is off.
Yeah, Mr.
You just turn your mic on.
He's got to turn on over here.
Sorry, I have not researched this issue, so I would have to have some more specifics before I can comment on it.
I have a question.
Who has a question? Reverend Matthews?
Yes. So if the council does vote to, and if it's an allowable cost for training, when I believe it should be, and if we approve Dr. Rink's attendance or participation in that program, will that courtesy be extended to all council members?
That's what we're going to discuss too.
Okay, first I have a motion by Mr. Patrick.
But we got to make sure what his motion is.
I'm going to take care of that first. For her to get the scholarship, that's to participate in this program. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Got a second?
I want an answer to my
question.
question.
Now we're up for discussion. Okay.
So I'd like an answer to that question.
According to Mr. Eric, he would have to do some research. Mr. Bo said it seemed like an allowable cost for the parish to pick it up if we so choose to do that.
So what does she do in the meantime? Does she pay for it and wait and hope we're going to reimburse her? Or does she wait? Does she wait to take the course and lose her slot?
She said
What does
she'll
she
pay
do?
for the course right now. And if we so choose to do them reimbursed, I guess we can.
She's already paid for it.
She already
So
paid for
Dr.
it.
Rink, what is the timeline on enrollment? How long are they allowing us to enroll?
The course starts on August 3rd. I can message Luke back tomorrow and find out for sure when the absolute deadline is for applications. But I don't know that for sure. I can't tell you off the top of my head right now.
Okay.
Okay, let's vote on this motion. Go ahead, Mr. Ina.
Mr. Chairman, I had one question. I wanted to ask Dr. Rink, do you think, I'm in favor of it, and for us to get our bang for our buck, so to speak, would you be able to, once you completed the course, would you be able to kind of maybe do some type of redelivery or some kind of recap of the things that you may have picked up or may have learned that you could pass along to the rest of the council, so maybe we could be enlightened to some of the things that you learned?
Yes, sir.
Okay, got a motion by Mr. Patrick to allow Dr. Rink to accept the scholarship.
And to attend.
And to attend it online. Have a second by Mr. Matthews. And she's picking up the additional cost at this time.
Everybody heard me fussing.
Right?
Correct.
Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Motion carries.
Thank you, guys. And woman.
All right, next up is, we took care of item E. Item F, I had on discussion relative to public notifications on public hearings and council notices. All I would like to do in the future is that we have an item that's coming up for a public hearing on the council agenda that we run it in the paper in the area where it's happening at. Let's say if we have an issue in Morgan City or Bayou Vista or Berwick, we run it in the local paper in Morgan City. If we have an issue on the west end of the parish, we run it for a board or a district, we run it in the paper on the west end of the parish. To get people more notified of what's going on. Any discussion?
So basically, I did some research just to kind of find out what the Daily Review, their charge would be the same as the Banner, of course, like $3 per column inch. And we had a very great suggestion by Mr. Eric Duplantis. Instead of like Mr. Adams and I was talking about, like the running of the whole agenda would be quite pricey in the Daily Review. Mr. Eric Duplantis suggested that I was thinking about just doing like a public notice, and then he said what would be a great idea is maybe on that little notice is put in that our agendas are on all of our websites. And then so if the citizens get the paper, they'll still see the little ad running that we're having our meeting, but they'll also know where to go to see our full agenda. So if in that case, if the boards are coming up on that meeting, they can check the agenda on our website and they can see when it's coming due. So that would be a little bit of a little idea, but of course, if y'all do want to do any additional running in the Daily Review, we would have to get that approved by the council.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
So maybe I'm whenever we run, say if we have a board in Morgan City, let's use a drainage board, we're taking applications right now. Do we automatically run that ad in the Daily Review, or is it just in the Franklin?
No, I run it in the Daily Review because it's on that end of the parish.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
That's all I need to know.
So we would do the same thing for public notices. If it's happening on the east end of the parish, we run a notice over there. If it's happening on the west end of the parish, we run a notice on this end.
Okay, well, public notice is a little, like a public hearing notice, is that what you're?
Yes.
Okay, currently I'm only running the public hearing notices in our official journal, which is the Banner. So that is not ran on the other end. And that's why we put public hearing notices and of course, like the council meeting notices, so we can discuss that tonight.
It needs to be on Morgan City and also.
And usually my public hearing notices are not very large.
Right.
If you look back to your very first page,
Right.
this is what you're looking for. You're looking at my, well, I can pull it out here. You're looking at something at about this length. Now, it is a little bit longer than normal because we're working at a different level right now. We're having to put a lot more with it being on Zoom, but normally this is cut down a couple of paragraphs from me. So if y'all would want me to run the public hearing notices on both ends, we would need permission from the council to get that done.
Mr. Chair, can I ask Mr. Duplantis a question?
Mr. Duplantis, we have a question for you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Duplantis, my question for you is, I know that legally right now, according to the state, it has to be in an official newspaper. But in the technologic age that we're in, what can we do as far as evolving our website and the notifications that happen through the website or other social media avenues? What's legally allowed with that currently?
We have to follow the state statutes as far as publication in the official publication, which is the banner. That doesn't preclude us from, in addition to publishing in the banner, publishing it on our websites or in a newspaper, for instance, like we have on the other side of the parish in my hometown of Morgan City. You could either you could publish it twice. There's no prohibition from doing that. Or you could put an abbreviated notation of something, for instance, that we're going to have a meeting on date X, and the full agenda is found on the website. So there's nothing prohibits us from also publishing on social media or whatever we want, or in another newspaper. We just have to, at least, at a minimum, publish it in an official publication.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I think we should. I'd like to make a motion where Tran also covering the Morgan City Daily Review to cover the east end of the parish along with the west end.
I'll second that.
Got a second by Mr. Matthews.
And if you don't mind, two gentlemen and then everyone else, I'd like to just clarify this. This is to run like a public notice hearing and then the public hearing notice also. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Along with the website at the bottom.
Correct. Yes, sir.
The
Okay.
parish government website. Thank you.
Thank you. Just do all in favor.
Okay. Got a motion by Mr. Bennett to run the notifications for the items on the east end in the Daily Review. I have a second by Mr. Matthews. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Motion carries.
And I did receive some, I did put a note on there. Okay, 16G was appointments to the following boards and commissions. The Fire Protection District Number 2 is the Centerville areas, and there is 3 vacancies, but as of today, after the deadline, all of the present members have phoned me in to say they would like to be reappointed, which is Mr. John Higdon, Hewlett Knight Jr., and Larry J. LeBlanc. Mr. Rodney, what is your wishes?
Yes, Lisa, if you can go ahead and schedule it for our next meeting.
Yes, sir. I'll place it back on the next meeting.
I spoke with these fellows here, and I had a feeling that they didn't know that their term was up, and that's why they called in, but they were late to call. So if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and put it on the next agenda.
I sure will do that. Thank you, sir.
Take care of that. Thank you.
Any other business?
Mr. Chairman, there's no business. Wow. I'll make a motion that we go ahead and adjourn.
Got a motion by Mr.
He
Mullins.
went deep in that one.
We have a second?
He went deep on that one.
Second.
Second by Mr. Mullins. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against?